Imagine a battlefield where the swords are smiles, the treaties are veils, and the most dangerous figure isn't the king, but the woman standing just behind him. History remembers her as decoration, as temptation, as collateral. But beneath those titles lies something colder, sharper, more calculated. She was never just a symbol, she was a weapon. Power doesn't always enter through the front gates. Sometimes it slips through the sheets, whispers through corridors, and bleeds into decisions that appear to come from a man's mouth, but originate from a woman's mind. And in the political world Machiavelli described, a world where virtue is theater and strategy is survival, those who appear weakest are often playing the longest game. This is not a celebration of victimhood. It is an unflinching look at how women have been used as tools of empire, as agents of diplomacy, as scapegoats and symbols. But more importantly, it is a study of those who refused to remain tools and became tacticians instead. Women who learned to weaponize what they were given, their position, their body, their silence, their story. Machiavelli understood power not as a moral force, but as a tool to be sharpened. He would not be surprised to learn that some of the most effective political actors in history wore crowns they never publicly claimed. They didn't command armies. They commanded hearts, minds, succession, and survival. Today, we tear off the fantasy and examine the structure. We step into the reality behind the image, not to romanticize it, but to understand it. Because in a world where perception is everything and manipulation is the true language of power, no one plays the game more effectively than the one you never saw coming. And in the shadows of history, that figure is almost always a woman. She enters the story as a symbol, married off for peace, paraded for beauty, silenced for diplomacy. Her name appears in treaties, not in triumphs. She is offered like property, positioned like a pawn. But what no one sees is how quickly a pawn becomes the most dangerous piece on the board when she learns to read the game. In Machiavelli's world, the weak are not pitied. They are exploited, or they evolve. And the woman who begins as a political tool often becomes something far more threatening. She learns that influence isn't seized, it's absorbed, not by raising armies but by mastering timing, by turning her proximity to power into quiet leverage, by watching what others miss. They think she's there to obey, but she listens, remembers, connects. She learns which advisor lies, which general drinks too much, which minister fears scandal, and with every passing moment, she builds a map no one else sees, a blueprint of the kingdom's vulnerabilities. Power, as Machiavelli teaches, belongs to the one who understands people's fears and desires better than they do themselves. And in a room full of men desperate to prove their strength, the woman who seems harmless becomes invisible. But invisibility is an advantage. From the shadows, she gains access others will never suspect. She doesn't challenge the system directly, she rewires it from within. To be underestimated is not a disadvantage, it is the perfect disguise, because the most lethal weapon is the one no one sees coming. And by the time they realize she's not playing the role they wrote for her, she's already rewritten the rules of the entire game. She began as a pawn, but now every move revolves around her, and no one even knows who's truly winning. Love is the lie, marriage is the contract, and in the theater of politics, nothing is more effective than dressing power in the clothes of romance. For centuries, women have been handed over as peace offerings, their futures traded for territory, their bodies exchanged for influence. But what appears to be surrender is often a transaction, one where she understands the price, the stakes, and most importantly, the leverage. Machiavelli understood that alliances must be forged not just with arms, but with appearances. And marriage, in his cold arithmetic, was never about affection. It was about stability, legacy, and control. A woman placed in marriage was expected to remain quiet, loyal, and useful. But those who saw the truth beneath the ceremony knew they had entered a different kind of battlefield. A wife sees what the council never hears. She witnesses the weaknesses behind the crown, the confessions spoken in exhaustion, the secrets muttered in bed. And if she listens, if she remembers, she gathers power with every night that passes, not through domination, but through presence, through intimacy, through access. Some became advisors in disguise, others whisperers of doubt or ambition, and in rare cases, they became the unseen architect of policy, pushing decisions not through command, but suggestion. What seems like coincidence is often choreography. A ruler acts, and the world believes it was his will. But the idea was planted long before, in a moment no historian bothered to record. There is no force more underestimated than a woman whose loyalty is assumed, because once she understands that her marriage is a position of surveillance, of persuasion, of proximity to the pulse of power, she no longer plays the role of ornament. She becomes the hand behind the throne, and no one notices until it's too late. Every empire is built on appearances. The illusion of stability, the illusion of justice, and most dangerously, the illusion of virtue. Machiavelli warned that a ruler must appear moral, even when acting against morality, because people do not follow goodness, they follow the comfort of its image. And no image has been more skillfully weaponized than that of the virtuous woman. She is painted in gold, pure, obedient, soft-spoken, the embodiment of grace and morality. But this image is a mask, and some women learned early how to wear it like armor. Because in a world that punishes open ambition, virtue becomes camouflage, a way to move through power structures without resistance, to speak softly, all while shaping what others believe, fear, and obey. The closer a woman appears to moral perfection, the less anyone suspects her motives. She becomes untouchable, above suspicion, and that is where true control begins. While others are calculating moves in the open, she is operating behind closed doors, manipulating not through force, but through reputation, because no one questions the hand that seems pure. A single glance, a word of disapproval, a subtle shift in presence, these become tools of consequence. Entire decisions pivot around her favor. Rivals are undermined not by decree, but by implication. She doesn't need to shout to destroy someone. She only needs to suggest they've failed her image. In Machiavelli's world, virtue is not truth, it is utility. And the woman who masters this illusion walks untouched through fire, because she understands that when people believe in your purity, they stop protecting themselves. They let you in, they let you close. And by the time they realize virtue was never the weapon, it was the bait, they're already under her control. There are two types of power, the one you see and the one you feel. One demands attention, the other seeps under the skin, unnoticed but unforgettable. In the Machiavellian world of deception and leverage, the most potent force is not brute strength, it's access. And no one gains access more effortlessly than the woman who learns how to seduce without surrendering anything at all. Seduction is not about desire, it's about information. It's about lowering defenses, creating comfort, and turning intimacy into intelligence. In royal courts and political chambers, the seductress became more than a mistress, she became a spy. Her currency wasn't gold or land, it was secrets, whispers shared in bed, names muttered in drunken confidence, ambitions revealed in the glow of infatuation. Every word became a weapon, every encounter a strategy. Machiavelli taught that deception is not immoral if it secures power, and the woman who mastered charm, allure, and curiosity became the embodiment of this principle. She doesn't demand answers. She lets silence linger just long enough for others to speak too much. She doesn't press, she listens, she collects. And when the time comes, she knows exactly how to use what she's gathered. Her reputation is both her shield and her tool. Men underestimate her, they confide in her, they compete for her attention. And while they scheme in daylight, she is already 3 steps ahead, working in shadows, feeding the right words to the right ears, bending alliances without ever appearing in the official record. She is not a decoration. She is not a distraction. She is the observer in plain sight, the one who turns affection into leverage and vulnerability into victory. And in the world Machiavelli warned us about, she is not immoral, she is essential. When power begins to crack, the first to bleed is never the one who gave the order, it's the one who can't defend herself. In political collapse, betrayal, scandal, or failure, the woman closest to power becomes the perfect scapegoat. She is easy to name, easier to blame, and easiest to silence. Machiavelli understood that the appearance of control must be preserved at any cost. When rulers stumble, they need someone to absorb the fall, someone visible enough to take the shame, but voiceless enough to be dismissed. And history shows the same pattern again and again. The mistress accused of corruption, the wife blamed for weakness, the advisor turned traitor by rumor. It's not truth that matters in politics, it's convenience. The woman who was once adored becomes dangerous the moment things go wrong. Her intimacy with power, once her greatest asset, becomes the noose around her neck. Because proximity means knowledge, and knowledge in a crumbling regime is a threat. She is cast out, imprisoned, exiled, or worse, not because she failed, but because someone had to pay, and she was closest to the fire. But here's what Machiavelli would admire. Some women knew this would happen, and they prepared. They left letters, planted narratives, positioned allies. They understood the game well enough to vanish before the sword dropped. Because survival is the highest form of strategy, and reputation can be rebuilt, but only if you live to shape it. To be sacrificed is not always to lose. Sometimes it is to disappear at the exact right moment, to let the storm pass over while others tear each other apart. And when the dust clears, she returns, not as a victim, but as the only one who understood that in the end, power doesn't protect anyone. Preparation does. Some women never wore the crown, never sat on the throne, never held an official title. But they chose the kings. They decided who would rise, who would fall, and who would never be remembered at all. In Machiavellian terms, they were not rulers by name, but rulers by influence. The power behind the power. The kingmaker operates in silence. She doesn't seek attention, because attention is a liability. Instead, she cultivates loyalty, watches for weakness, and places the right man in the right position at the perfect moment. She is the one who molds sons into heirs, whispers strategy to lovers, and steers nations by steering those who believe they are in charge. What Machiavelli understood better than anyone was that it is more effective to manipulate the ruler than to be the ruler, to command without consequence. And this is where the kingmaker thrives. She has no throne to defend, no crown to lose. Her weapon is foresight, her defense is invisibility. While others clash in public, she builds empires in the shadows. She is the mother who raises a dynasty, the confidant who rewrites succession, the widow who turns mourning into momentum. She sees what ambition blinds others to: timing, perception, trust. She knows that real control is not about forcing decisions, it's about shaping the conditions in which there is only one decision left to make, and it's hers. The kingmaker is never recognized until the story is already written. By the time anyone asks who orchestrated the rise, the moment has passed. Her influence is everywhere, but her fingerprints are gone. Because true mastery, as Machiavelli knew, doesn't need recognition. It only needs results. And the woman who places kings does not need to rule. She simply needs to choose who will. There is a difference between being used and choosing to be useful, between being pushed into a role and stepping into one with full awareness. The most dangerous political weapon is not the woman forced into proximity with power. It is the woman who walks toward it with her eyes open, not because she must, but because she intends to wield it. Machiavelli never glorified innocence. He respected effectiveness. And in a world that has long expected women to be pawns, the woman who understands her value, who understands her influence, is not just playing the game, she's rewriting it. Not through rebellion, not through spectacle, but through intent. Through control without confession, power without permission. She knows how to be underestimated and how to use that underestimation as a shield. She knows when to perform softness, when to deploy silence, and when to strike without leaving a trace. Not because she is forced to play a role, but because she chooses the role that wins. That is the harsh truth Machiavelli understood. Appearances are tools, morality is flexible, and survival favors those who know how to adapt without losing control. The woman who becomes a political weapon by choice understands that power is not about force, it's about precision. About being in the right place at the right moment with the right face. She doesn't wait for doors to open, she becomes the key. And in doing so, she stops being the message and becomes the messenger. No longer a symbol, no longer a tool. She is now the strategist, the architect, the force behind the illusion of order. Not because she had to be, but because she chose to be. And choice, in a world built on manipulation, is the purest, sharpest form of control.